Okay, good morning. We're concluding basically Eruv Tavshilin. Okay, just a couple little points where we left off, concluding Eruv Tavshilin, concluding Yom Tov. And then we'll begin Chol Hamoed. So again, this goes back to the siman of Taf Kuf Chaf Zayin. A couple of things pointed out. Again, just wanted to also point out that Eruv Tavshilin, and Chazal points out that even Avraham Avinu did it, so we know it's important. Okay, what happens if you have two people who live in the same place? They roommates, and they keep everything. Basically, they have their own finances, their own food, etc. Two families, even though they live together, everyone agrees. For example, Chai Adam, Chazon Ovadia, that they need to do. Each one has to make their own Eruv Tavshilin with the bracha, because they're their own people and their own separate. Okay, the question that we have to deal with is what happens if you are a guest. It's very common. Kids come home, married couples, they go to their parents, and they sleep over, and they eat all their meals by their parents. It's very common. We have guests, you have families, friends, they come, they sleep over, and they move in for Yom Tov and Shabbos. So do the guests, they're essentially not bringing in their own food, they're not coming to cook, they're coming to be guests, and they're sleeping over and they're eating there. But so the question is, do they have to make an Eruv Tavshilin? Are they allowed to, with or without a bracha? And it's so even if they have no plans to cook or bake whatsoever, we do know it's important either for the purpose of lighting candles. That's a reason why it's L'chadchila, we need an Eruv Tavshilin to light candles without a bracha. And also, let's say they want to help. They also want to cook. They also want to do malacha. They can help out the balabasta. She can help out the parents, the mother, whatever. So then, they need an Eruv, perhaps. So that's the question. So basically, it seems to be, I've done a survey walking up to, let's first point out that I think one of the first ones who actually speak about it most directly is the Eshel Avram, Hibuchach. So he points out the minhag is you do not need to make an Eruv Tavshilin. The Oreach, the guest, does not need to. And that's brought down, Rav Yashiv says that's the minhag, it's quoted in his name from the Piskei Teshuvos that's the minhag. Shulchan Aruch Harav says not necessary. Shemar Shabbos Ki Chasa says it's not necessary. Chazon Ovadia. That's, okay. In contrast, I saw, Rav Karelitz, he says Yechayev. Rav Kornfeld also said that one must do an Eruv Tavshilin, with or without a bracha. You have a choice. I guess he holds you're allowed to exclude yourself. Let's see. Rav Stern, B'Shem Rav Nassan, Geshtetino says you don't need to. Rav Weiner says Mikar Din, you don't need to. Just to point out some names. And Piskei Teshuvos says you could be machmer. Well, they basically everyone says you could be machmer. And to be machmer, though, anyone who I've seen says it has to be done with a zikoi. I did see a prominent Rav say that all you have to do is have them in mind. The Baal Bayit just has them in mind and keeps them in mind, and that works. But everybody I've spoken to or written, or anything I've seen written, says clearly they have to do you have to do it through a kinyan. Having somebody in mind doesn't do anything. It's like an Eruv Tavshilin we're all familiar with, or an Eruv Tchumin. It doesn't work just to have somebody in mind. They have to own part of that bread. So I don't think having a mind helps, but it must be if you're going to be machmer to do like that. If the Mishnah Berurah is a little bit unclear, he leaves it by tzarach iyun. Basically, the Mishnah Berurah leaves it as a tzarach iyun. In short, he's discussing a case where someone works for you and they're there all the time. You can look at it this way and that way, but it's very likely he would say also the same thing by a guest is a tzarach iyun. I also asked Rav Sauer. He told me he believes I think you can ask yourself this, the vast majority from Jews do not bother making an Eruv Tavshilin.
When and or after?
when you're in Areach. Thank you. When you're in Areach. I've asked several from Yidden on the street, including Avrechim and a Sofer, and no one does an Erev Tavshilin, whoever I've asked.
And do the Balabatim Mezake in those situations?
If you want to be Machmir, then you have to be Mezake.
If you want to be Machmir, and not make your own, but not...
Oh, no. For the Balabait to make it for you, then the Balabait has to give it to you, it has to be Machmir to you. You have to be a partial owner. We learned.
It's not enough Machshava, you said.
Clearly not. The Rav Va'ir doesn't do it by Machshava. It also has to be with the Mamash Kinyan. So that seems to be clear.
Aren't living in his house.
Yeah, but it doesn't work unless you own the bread. If you hold your chayiv to have an Erev Tavshilin, then it doesn't work unless you're partial owner and it's done for you.
Why does it work for his wife and children?
So that's from the Yom Shel Shlomo, that the Mishnah Berurah does point out. All Yachonim agree. If you live there, you're somech al shulchanam, all year long, then everyone agrees, you don't have to make an Eruv. The wife and kids are somech al shulchanam all year, kavua. Everyone agrees, you're part of the Balabait, and that's for sure what Chazal had in mind. The only question is, does that same Yom Shel Shlomo, or that same opinion, which everyone holds by, do you extend that to guests who are just there? They have their own bank account, they have their own kitchen, their own house. They're here right now just for a couple of days or a week. That's exactly the machlokas. And it's clear, you can make a comparison to Adlakas Neros, but it's clear it's not the same. Adlakas Neros is a chiyuv for everyone to do. You need to have light in the room. Many point this out, it's in Yom Tov Sheni Ki Chasa. He writes this, based on the Kaf Chaim, Chazanish, and Chas Yitzchak, of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, the Eruv Tavshilin, again, it could be a machlokas, but they hold, it's not an absolute chiyuv like Hadlakas Neros. It's a mitzvah to do Eruv Tavshilin, but it's not a chiyuv the same way of Hadlakas Neros is. It's if you plan to cook and bake and light candles and whatever else, so Chazal said it's a mitzvah for each home to do it. But if you have zero plans to do anything, then there's no chiyuv. So that's, I think, how most learn. Fine. I think we've tackled that for the most part. Hotels, so I think pretty much most, if not all, would say in a hotel, even if you're eating out, since you have your own place and you're sleeping there, and it's not necessarily done for you. So it depends if it's done with you for a kinyan, v'chuli, if it could be done. But generally speaking, the proper thing to do in a hotel is usually to do an Erev Tavshilin. Chazon Ovadia, Mishnah Halachos, Be'er Moshe, Moadim Zmanim, v'chuli, Piskei Teshuvos, that you should do it without a bracha. Again, at the hotel really depends on the exact situation. Okay? Another separate issue real quick is Yom Tov Sheni for a Ben Eretz Yisrael, if he goes to Chutz La'aretz. So, let's say it's Thursday, Friday. Friday is Yom Tov Sheni, right? For us living in Eretz Yisrael, if we go to Chutz La'aretz and it's, do you need to do an Erev Tavshilin? So the halacha is, Chazon Ovadia, Shemar Shabbos Kilchasa, Mishnah Berurah says you do not make an Erev Tavshilin because for you it's an absolute day of Chol, Friday. So Friday, if you want to cook from Friday to Shabbos, it's 100% mutter, and you don't have this problem of, people are going to see you because everyone else did the Erev Tavshilin. So it's just a minhag of you have to behave like the people who live in Chutz La'aretz. But the people who live in Chutz La'aretz, they themselves are cooking, so you're allowed to cook, and you were never chayiv in Erev Tavshilin, but for you, be'etzem, it's really a day of Chol. So it'll be a bracha levatala. Okay, so it depends. We'll leave it at.
Then you shouldn't cook though right before Shabbos.
Yesh machmir, yesh mekilim gam bezeh. So it depends. Okay, but good point. You should behave like them. And what if you're in Ben Chul? If you live in Chutz La'aretz all year, but you come to Eretz Yisrael, so then again, Shemar Shabbos Kilchasa, Chazon Ovadia says you have to make an Erev Tavshilin with the bracha. Because for you, again, it depends how you hold, by 1 day or 2 days. If you hold your chayav in 2 days, then you would say an Erev Tavshilin, you would make one and say it with the bracha on on your second day Yontiv, even though for Eretz Yisrael it's not, but you're treating it, you're saying Kiddush, you're doing everything. If that's what you're doing, so then that's what you be consistent. One other important topic, Eruv Tavshilin. So we spoke about Eruv Tavshilin for food, so we say in the Nusach for all your needs. But it's a really machloka in the poskim. Does that include all your needs that are completely irrelevant to ochel nefesh? It's one thing if you're preparing, but if it's completely unrelated, let's say perhaps again this is a separate shaila, but if we're machmer for not making beds, you want to make a new bed, take off the sheets or whatever, make the beds on Friday afternoon specifically for Shabbos. You want to prepare and roll a Sefer Torah on Friday for Shabbos. You want to move it before Shabbos on Friday. Let's say from the Yom Tov reading to Shabbos or whatever the story is, just to move it. Can you do that? Again, nothing to do with food. Folding a talis is another question. Perhaps washing dishes. That's also a question. Do you call that sarchei achila or not? Washing dishes. So anyways, for all these things, the Ran, Magen Avraham, and Mishnah Berurah say Aser, and the Or Zerua, Mishnah Berurah again, Rabbi Kiva Eger, and Chazon Ovadia all say Mutter. So I don't know. Tzarachin a little on for on Friday to even without an error, right? Because of but normally he didn't. Right. So the creases could be tikkun mana, but that's a separate issue. Right. Okay. Very good. And fine. We're done with Eruv Tavshilin. Just one thing to throw out there that we spoke about briefly was issues of gas. Just real quick. So we have just a couple types of gas. One is just to make seltzer, and the other one is fuel. So when it comes to those soda machine tanks making seltzer, so I think all the poskim say it's not a problem to make it. We don't call that nolad. It's water. It's just mixing. It's like mixing petrol with water. If that's mutter for dyeing, but whatever it is, that's not a problem. Screwing it in and even changing the canisters. So I think all the poskim say as well that's mutter because you're not doing anything. It's true it squeezes tight, but it's just you're not fixing the kli. You're just changing the cartridge, and you're not like hammering it in. When there's a takana or a gzera about doing shama yitaka, you can't put pieces of furniture together. That's when you're really hammering it in. It could be with your body. It doesn't have to be with tools. But if hammering it in could be a problem. But here, it's very easy. If any kid can open and close them, it's not an issue.
What about changing gas balloon on the stove?
Shevet Levi, Rosh Hashanah, and Orach Chaim all point out it's for sure mutter. What was that?
Change a gas balloon on the stove.
Okay, so changing a gas stove. So for those, I believe if it's a simple tank, you're just doing a little tightening of the screw. I believe everyone says is mutter, but again, you can ask everybody. For sure, Rav Shlomo Zalman says it's mutter. What about the stove? If you have the actual pipe that you hook up to your appliance, not just a little screw knob, but it's a simple thing for like a barbecue grill.
Cold water.
But let's say you have these pipes, plastic tubes, or rubber tubes that you need for the stove. So that, I don't know other countries. In Israel, you have to be a license to do that for legal reasons, but that has no bearing in halacha. A lot of things are just for monopoly or personal gains. But when it comes to actually but it's still not super easy, and you have to attach it. So it depends. Rav Elyashiv says it's aser unless you have a goy to hook it up for you. This is relevant not for Shabbos, but this is relevant for Yom Tov because you want to cook with it. So Orach Chaim says it's a problem because you're mosif binyan from your house. Different stadium, and if I have it correct, I believe it's Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says it's mutter to attach a pipe from the house of gas to the stovetop. But double check. You have to also make sure everyone's understanding each other's cases. The way it's written, sometimes it's not so clear. But it seems to be bottom line for stoves to a gas. to your kirayim, to your stovetop, with the proper pipe, but you don't necessarily need tools, but most people will hurt their fingers if you don't use the tool, because they're tight. Depends on the situation, depends on the person, depends if you call it a Maaseh Uman or not. So anyways, we'll leave that as a shaila, but, yesh v'yesh.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah? Okay. Fine. So let's just start with Chol Hamoed a little bit, so that we can actually start. We start with, right, in the Mishnah Berurah it's Chelik Vav, and here we are, Taf Kuf Lamed. Taf Kuf Lamed, the beginning of Hilchas Chol Hamoed. Alright? This is just an intro siman. So Aleph says, Chol Hamoed, Asar Biktsat Melachot, Umutar Biktsatan. So when it comes to Chol Hamoed, there's malachos, and some of them are asr, and some of them are mutar. Haga, lefi tzorach enyan shaya nir chachamim mahatir. And the Ramah points out it's all based on how the chachamim decided. Okay, that's all it says. Fine. Just to point out, I'm sure there's a lot of different places you can read a good quick intro. I'll just the Mishnah Berurah, the beginning of the intro from the Oz V'Hadar edition, but there's a lot of them out there. Just in real brief, it's important to point out. So you have in Chazal some breitos where it points out it's using psukim to show us that certain things are usher to do on Chol Hamoed. So I'll spare you of quoting them all, but just to point out, the question is malachos on Chol Hamoed. When they're usher, we're going to learn. Sometimes it's mutter, sometimes it's usher. We just read that, but we're going to learn. So whenever it's asr, is it asr midaraisa, midarabanan? Big machlokas, Rishonim and Achronim. It's just good to have in mind, just to get a quick overview. So, thus the Rashi and the Rif hold it's real drashos. In other words, according to the Torah, it's absolutely asr to do many malachos on a Chol Hamoed min ha-Torah. But the Torah itself didn't explain itself and express exactly which ones. So we need Chazal to tell us what the Torah had in mind. But in general, most things, again depends, most things are only, that are asr min ha-Torah. Now, to the exact opposite extreme is the Rosh, Tosfos, and the Rambam, and they hold that it's all these drashos are pure smachtas ba'alma, and every isra on Chol Hamoed is only asr midarabanan. And that is apparently, that's how most understand the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch. And that's the general halacha for, according to most Sephardic poskim. Now, there's a middle shita. I don't believe he came to make a compromise. But it happens to be somewhere a little bit in between, a little bit of a combo. It's the Ramban, the Rashba, Ritva, and of course all of them have others that they hold. The Ramban gets the most credit. So he holds some of the blachos are min ha-Torah, and some of them are midarabanan. It's not all or none. It depends. Each case, it depends what it is. Generally speaking, whenever it's a clear isser malacha, that whenever we learn that the halacha is a clear isser malacha on Chol Hamoed, in general it's min ha-Torah, so it's usually going to be min ha-Torah. However, whenever there's a tzorach for the moed or a davar ha'aved, so then min ha-Torah it's 100% mutter, but Chazal sometimes said that those cases are also asr, such as, in other words, even where it's davar ha'aved and tzorach hamoed, we're going to see sometimes it's asr if it's tircha yasera, if it's a lot of exertion or too much work, too much time, or a maaseh uman, or you need an expert to do it. So even by davar and an aved, where it's tzorach hamoed, but you have these cases where it's would be mutter, but it's asr, but it's tircha yasera and maaseh uman, so those are the cases that are asr derabanan. But most cases, but it happens to be, I think most cases are Mina Torah according to the Ramban. And fine. And the Mishnah Berurah sides for the most part with the Ramban. But he says, when there's a tzorach gadol, then we can assume either davar aved, or a tzorach hamoed, or a tzorach gadol. He adds the tzorach gadol, then we can all be mekel according to the Rambam, who says it's only an iser darabanan. And if it's only an iser darabanan, so then there's more room to be mekel in certain cases. And just to point out, the 5 main categories of malacha that are aser are, number 1, when it becomes mutter. So normally malachos would be aser. And Chazal explained there's 5 main categories when it is mutter. One is whenever it's tzorach ochel nefesh for the holiday. B is whenever it's davar ha'aved, when you're going to lose money, you lose your job, or it's not losing opportunity to make more money, it's when you're actually going to lose something you already have. Gimel, whenever it's for tzorach hamoed, even if it's not for food. Dalid, whenever you want to help someone who doesn't have food to eat. That's right. Poel she'en lo ma yochal. Hey is tzorchei rabim, whenever you're doing something for the rabim. So those are the cases when, in general, it's going to be mutter, even though it's a malacha. Okay. And, a famous Yerushalmi, for Bi'aba Bar Mamo says the point of Chol Hamoed is to enjoy it with food and drinking and learning Torah. And he says if people don't learn Torah, then and all they're doing is fooling around and just wasting time. He would have asered all the malachos on Chol Hamoed, just like Yom Tov. So, anyways, should we stop or do one more halacha? We'll just do a couple halachas and then we'll stop. Tav Kuf Lamed Aleph. Tav Kuf Lamed Aleph. Dine Giluach B'Chol Hamoed. So getting haircuts. Aleph. Mitzvah L'Galeach Be'erev Yom Tov. It's a mitzvah to get haircuts, to shave Erev Yom Tov. Now the ikar shaving that we're talking about is referring to the hair, but we'll get to beards shortly. So, but it applies to both. Beis ein megalchin b'moed. We do not get haircuts or shave during Chol Hamoed as well. Afilu in gilach kodem moed. Even if you did get a haircut or shaved right before the holiday, it continues. It's also aser during. And the whole point is we don't want people to not take care of themselves ahead of time, push things off for Chol Hamoed. I'm busy now, and then when Chol Hamoed comes, then I'm going to be busy taking care of all my regular needs. So that's the reason why it's a mitzvah to do it before, and they also doing it during. Now, Pashta says most learn even if you did shave or get a haircut before, it's aser during. It's during. What's it called? Even if you did, it's also aser during. And it applies to both hair and to beards, but I will point out the Rabbeinu Tam says it's mutter, that if you did get a haircut before, it's mutter during, and Moshe, in Igros Moshe, he writes that if a person did shave a beard before Yom Tov, he's allowed to shave during Chol Hamoed. I think most don't, but that's his psak. And what's it called? And on Erev Yom Tov, it's best to get one in the morning, but it's mutter even after Chatzos, except for Erev Pesach. And I think we'll stop here.
Yosef,